So I think one thing I don't think I can name a person particularly because I think being in India, what is truly inspiring is that we're actually surrounded by the arts almost everywhere, which is something, and I think that's what I realized that we're absorbing so much visual language from typography to murals to our textile to architecture to and all of it, like, as you move from state to state, from town to town, it changes with new more and more new things. And I was lucky enough to have traveled this country quite wide enough when I was really young, because my mom and dad were always fond of road trips, so we'd always be on the back seat and we'd be going through different remote parts of this country. And I think I've been deeply inspired by the visual culture of what India has to offer because it is so rich in storytelling. It is so rich in culture. It's so rich in like color and such magical folklore that finds form in so many mediums that even till date, when I find myself in places just being in complete awe of this just this power of storytelling that we've been surrounded by forever, and I think that has definitely been a forever inspiration, I think, for me, to access. Yeah. I think that's how I grew up. So I always grew up telling stories of how I saw things in my head and how I saw the world through my own imagination. And as I grew up, I realized um, that I had extremely profound experiences with that just like shaped so much of who I am, like because seeing my first shooting star, seeing, like I said, the first time you see clouds move, seeing like how trees sway to the wind, uh, I just realized that there is something so much more happening around us that we often don't see because we're so busy in our own way of looking at things. And the way the world works is it often tells you to put on blinkers and not actually feel and see everything around you. And I think my blinkers got like taken off far too soon when I was really young. So both the good and the bad was really, really experienced through through just like wide eyes, whether it was like I said, whether it was sorrow, pain, joy. And I realized the one thing that was saving me through all of this was looking at everything with adding a story, adding a connection, adding like this sense of like surrealism to it. And looking at myself from an exterior perspective. So which is why, like, when I started building the worlds that I do, very often you'll see like they're really dense worlds that ask you to return again and again and again, because that's how I started seeing the world around me. Like, I was encouraged also to see things again and again. Nature taught me that so often that, like I was speaking about the Ravlis where I grew up, where every season it shifted and became like this completely new place. And it was the same soil that was transforming again and again. It was the same tree that was transforming again and again. And within that, there were multiple realities. Like, what if I had only seen it one season? I would have thought it's probably like that throughout the year, but it wasn't. It would transform and become something every season, every day. And I think growing up, like I said, spending so much time in the natural world in very unique habitats, because even in the country that I live in, we have everything from the Himalayan mountain ranges to deserts to swamps to mangroves. I mean, to like horrific cities. We have the spectrum, and it's all here. All of it is here, and within that, there's suddenly these pockets that would open up with just like profound magic. Like, like I remember I was in New Delhi 2 years back, and it's a city that's like unfortunately like got the worst air. It's like terribly planned, but it's an incredibly biodiverse city. And I spoke to a friend of mine who was going on this mushroom fungi walk. And she'd been taking a lot of interesting pictures of fungi. So I wrote to her and I'm like, hey, I'm in the city. I don't know what to do. Can you take me for a walk? And she took me literally to this central forest called the Ridge, which is where I grew up, and we go for these morning forest walks. And I accessed that forest after 15 years of my life. And I entered that forest right after the rains had left. And it was blooming in the most unique kinds of fungi I've ever seen in my life. We spotted 72 species and things that I have like in one trek. And this is in the heart of a city that is like the most polluted city in the world almost. And I'm just like, what's going on? So the pockets of magic exist around us. We're not just one thing, we're so many things. And I think through these experiences where I realized that magic is right here, and that's how in my work I started accessing magical realism to tell stories. I always try and create from a space of joy and play. I think those are the things that I've always tried to root myself to, because I've never found myself um, attached to a particular medium. I'm constantly moving and like shape shifting between many things, and I think that is where the creative journey becomes exciting. And I think there's still so many mediums I want to try. Um, I've thoroughly enjoyed painting large scale murals. I've loved, like, recently, in fact, so the illustration worlds I would create would usually be more like diorama based 3D, like almost like, when you look into the world, it looks like with a lot of depth and there's so much happening. And I was itching and I was being like, you know what, I'm tired of seeing these as 2D images. I want to actually see these worlds where I can move things and get into them. And very recently, I actually have an exhibition coming up next month. And I've made like my own, like how I craft worlds into dioramas and automaton puppets, where now you can move all the creatures. It's always incredibly exciting to keep, like, shifting and playing. I think the act of being playful with what you make is so important. Last month I just tried ceramics. Now I'm making like a whole fungi universe out of ceramics. So I think I constantly play with things. I think different mediums call you at different points in time. Different stories call different mediums. Sometimes you want to interpret something through uh through clay, or through like dioramas, or like through film, through photography, a book. So I think that's what's been extremely exciting. I've been very fortunate enough to continue my play, I think, and experiment constantly with what can be made. And I think because I'm not like medium bound, my I think my well is mostly the stories that I actually marinate myself in. That from there I derive, okay, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I want to share, and then I try and search for a medium for it. So it's almost like looking at an infinite universe, where I don't even know what all I'm going to try in the future. So it's exciting. I like that sense of infiniteness, I would say, where anything can come up. And I like putting myself in scenarios where I don't know much, and I have to learn new things. I think that student in me is always alive, and I love placing myself in that position as an artist always. Yeah. For the past 4 years, it's been incredibly challenging and extremely like a deep dive into learning so much about the world that we live in, and how we really interact with this world, and what is the role of arts in citizenship and policy making, in crafting the future, and actually safeguarding the rights for forests, for people. It's just expanded my world beyond belief. And it's been such a source of learning that I truly believe that artists in my generation should be getting more involved with spaces that allow them to exercise their creativity in these spaces, where you are actually engaging with architects, scientists, engineers, policymakers, law, and how can we collectively envision a future together that looks at how we imagine our forests, our cities, our urban spaces. What can they become? I think this is the time where we all need to collectively think, and not just think in our little bubbles, but actually bring it to the forefront, because that's what we're missing, right? When we see laws passed, when we see definitions passed of how the natural world is being defined, it's like so capitalistic even today. Everything is looked at as an economic resource. Every connection to the natural world is a very give and take. There is, that spiritual connect to the forest is just slowly dying. So I'll come back to again and again. We all have facts, we all have numbers, we all have economics added to the natural world. But that's not it. It's definitely not it. There's so much more that particularly the creative community, I feel, can bring to this entire narrative, that can reshape how we're looking at ecology. And yeah, so I think that is something that we're 4 years down, and we're always going to be here. So it's been a very deep learning experience of my life that's shaped my entire practice. Like, it's definitely changed how I make art today in the world, which is a true gift, I think. It's really exciting. So it's called I still have to title it because I struggle with titling with my works, but it's currently like the tentative title is called The Hidden Worlds of Mumbai. And it's basically based on similar narrative of what I was saying. Bombay is such a sprawling urban metropolis that you imagine that what does this city contain? It's like it's infrastructurally crumbling. It's incredibly polluted. It's now got terrible air. The water is in like horrific state, and the city is constantly yet expanding. But within all this like mess, it is thriving with some of the most unique biodiversity that one can ever imagine. From like having leopards in the midst of the city to having like incredibly rare migratory birds arriving into the city to like having ancient tide pools that sprawl across the coast that like there are dolphins still in the water. And it's not like this is some like magical universe that's just brewing on its own. It's happened because of a lot of encroachment, a lot of habitat fragmentation, a lot of like a lack of understanding of how to plan a city that is surrounded by really rich biodiversity. But through this world, I'm trying to create like these three portals, which are these dioramas and automaton puppets, which look at three universes of the ocean, of the avian world, and an insectorium. That sort of like is sort of like a little gift for the people of Mumbai to remember that in a city that's so deeply stressed out, if you speak to anybody from that city, it has no public space. Because Bombay is an incredibly cramped city. It has no gardens or no public spaces where people can actually just enjoy anything of the natural world. There lies a possibility in how the city can be designed that can include its natural habitats and create a space for its citizens to actually build these connections with the natural world, and that will also really deeply impact the mental health of a city, which then in the end impacts how people belong to a city. Like I feel like we're often, now it's everything has become transient. We move to cities to make our money and leave, and in that process we've spent a large part of our lives deteriorating our health, deteriorating our mental health, our physical health. And here is a possibility that lies within a city to become incredibly connected to its natural ecosystems. And I've never understood why in its design it's never ever given that a possibility or even a chance to flourish. So that's what the project looks at, about like looking at these three dioramic worlds where citizens can or audiences can come and play, and they're all puppets that move, and they're all handmade puppets from scratch that look a lot like the universes that I've created. And I just want to bring them back the joy of connecting to the world around them, I feel, through this work. Yeah. I think the I think I only give one advice is that uh, inspire yourself from what's actually outside. I've seen today a lot of creators and makers. We are often relying on the internet to learn about the natural world. So, we'd Google up articles, we'd see videos, and, we do a lot of research, which is important. I do think that's important. But I think there are many inspirations that actually lie around us. So I would really encourage like, creators and makers to first have like an experience in their physical bodies with something. Observe the world around you. Like very often I say it starts as small with just placing a water bowl in front of your window and see like who are the birds appearing around me, what do they look like. So get out into the real world and actually create a relationship before you make something, because we always want to build sometimes some things that are probably larger than us. So we always think that we'll create something very profound and very like larger than life, but sometimes the magic is actually just around. It could be the relationship you have with your neighborhood wildcat, or like your neighborhood crow, or or the tree that's in your yard. What is it doing? What does it look like? What is like, just try and find inspiration with the natural world that's outside and not inside these like digital portals that exist today, the black screens, as we say. I would highly encourage that to develop that relationship first, and then from that relationship or that experience, I would say, um, process and create what that moment did to you and why you want to make something from it.